Hi guys, I'm going to get ready and do my makeup while I tell you this story because, to be honest, the idea of sitting down in front of the big camera to film this is just a little overwhelming right now, and for some reason filming it this way feels like it lowers the barrier of entry. And I do want to give a really big trigger warning that I am going to be discussing pregnancy loss and induced miscarriage, so if you are not in the right headspace to hear about that stuff right now, I totally understand. Your own mental well-being is so much more important. So I hope to see you on the next video, but now would be the time you should probably exit out if you don't want to hear about that. So I will also say, I know I'm giving disclaimers, but I feel like this video is more for me than it is for sharing it with you guys. I don't know if that makes sense, but I've been filming these videos and chatting through things in my life for over half of my life. And so for some reason, I'm someone who through words and stories and just talking about it seems to heal a little bit. And I just want to tell the whole story. I also feel like every pregnancy deserves to be celebrated. Every baby deserves to be celebrated. And so even though obviously we don't have a happy ending in this case, I don't just want to never mention it and pretend like my next pregnancy is my first pregnancy when I've already been kind of through the trenches of the first trimester, at least some of it. So I guess I'm gonna go ahead and just get started from the beginning. I'm gonna try to tell it in chronological order, but I might get a little bit I don't know, out of whack sometimes. But my husband and I were trying to conceive for a while, and finally on cycle 8, I believe, we finally got a positive pregnancy test. So on 9 DPO, 9 days post ovulation, I took a test that night and it was very negative, couldn't even squint and pretend to see a second line. And then the next morning I woke up and I took the test, I left it in the little package, I went out to make my coffee, and I just kind of started my day, and then I went back into the bathroom to start getting ready, and I pulled the test out of the thing, and I didn't even have to look at it for I don't know, more than a millisecond. I saw the second line. Even though it was super faint, it was definitely undeniably there. And so I immediately started freaking out internally, but it was one of those cheapy tests, and I decided that I needed to take a first response. So I actually took 2. I took a first response digital that says yes or no, and I took a first response that has the 2 pink lines. So both of those are supposed to be more sensitive. And I waited for the 3 minutes. I was just pacing around the room, and I remember starting the clock and then looking at it after I thought it had been 3 minutes, and it had been 36 seconds. So time definitely slowed down, and finally my 3 minutes were up, and I went and I checked the tests and they were both positive. I can't even explain how incredible that day was. It was definitely top 3 days of my entire life. I've been waiting to see that on a pregnancy test for so long, and even before I even got married and stuff, my dream has always been to be a mama. So having that confirmation, I was just so excited. We had been trying. We were just we were freaking pumped. I knew I couldn't keep it from my husband long enough to go get a cute little gift for him or something to reveal it. So I took all 3 of the tests and I went upstairs, but I didn't run. I walked to his office, and I am someone who can see a positive second line on basically every test I take. So he is my line checker, because I'll be hey babe, do you see 2 lines on this? And he'll look at it and he'll be no, there's definitely only 1. That's how I keep myself from just spiraling and checking it all the freaking time, because I swear I can see a second line on a lot of tests. I have what a lot of people call line eyes. So I took up the test to him and I handed him the cheapy strip test first, which had the faintest line. And I said, do you see a second line on this? And he looked at it, he held it up to the window, he got his phone flashlight, and he was no, it looks like the ink just smeared a little bit. In my mind, I was automatically okay, you are retired from being my line checker, because there is so clearly a second line there. So then I handed him the first response that had the 2 lines that was clearly positive. And he was wait, I see a second line on this one. I was oh, do you? What about this one? And then I handed him the one that just said yes on it. And obviously he knew right away then in and got so excited. We immediately FaceTimed our parents and our siblings. We told them all right away and told them, you know, it's obviously early. Like, I hadn't even missed my period yet. I was 10 DPO. And so anything could happen at that point, but we still wanted to share that this is what was in the process of happening. So that day I knew that this little baby was trying to fully implant and burrow in my uterus. And so I was supposed to film a video that day. I didn't. I set up a bed on my sofa, like just a comfy area. I propped my feet up. I laid back. I relaxed. Like, I just had a chill day. And that is what started our pregnancy journey. So like I said, that was when I was like 3 weeks, I think 4 days pregnant. I don't even remember how early it was that I found out, but I immediately started keeping track of all of my symptoms by week, because I assumed I was going to go through and do like a weekly pregnancy diary type video. So I kept very detailed lists of all of my symptoms. So that week I didn't really have any like major pregnancy symptoms. If anything, it was almost like the symptoms that you get before you get your period. So like my chest got extra sore and sensitive. And one weird thing I did notice is that it almost tasted like metallic in my mouth, like almost like pennies or quarters like in my mouth. It was a really weird thing, and the taste of plain water was disgusting to me. Weeks 4, 5, and 6 were definitely kind of like textbook. I was getting all of the pregnancy symptoms that people talk about. I was having food aversions. I was nauseous. My nausea, though, was not in the mornings. I felt best in the mornings. When I felt bad was actually the later on in the day. Like, I always started my days feeling great, not even really feeling pregnant. And by the end of the day, I was nauseous. I was drained. I was exhausted. I slept. Luckily, I was on like summer break from teaching, but I slept an additional, I think, like 5 hours a day during these couple weeks, which is wild because I can only do that obviously if I'm like sick or something. Definitely would say exhaustion and like food aversions were my biggest symptom that I had. And then I also started gaining weight like kind of more quickly than I expected. Like, I know a lot of people say you're not showing that early, but like whether it was bloat or baby or whatever it was, like I was definitely gaining and I was definitely having like a poochier belly. I know that a big part of that is that I typically try to eat pretty healthy, except when it's like the week before my period, I give into my cravings a little bit more just because the hormones, I'm kind of like, oh my goodness, I need it. And that's kind of how I felt like the entire pregnancy was, that like hormone overload of like, I need chocolate right now or whatever. So I know I wasn't eating quite as healthy as I typically do, but at the same time, I'm just like, I feel like I gained faster than like, I don't know, normal. I also have had some time to like process all of my emotions in this. So if it sounds like I'm speaking about it like nonchalantly, I don't feel like I need to come on here and like cry to the camera to show that we are like torn up about this or that we're devastated or whatever. So I don't know. I'm trying not to get super emotional during this. So that is going through my mind right now. But this brings us to week 6, which is when we could do the gender test with Sneak Peek. Elle did this with all of her pregnancies and they were all accurate. So it's a blood test that you do at home, you mail it in, and they tell you if you are more likely having a girl or a boy. It's not like 1000% accurate, but like I said, it's been right with all of my sister's kids. It's been right with a few of my friends who have done it. And I have read some like Reddit posts and stuff where it's been wrong for people, but it's the only confirmation we got of the gender of our baby. So that's what we're assuming it was. And I was positive when I got pregnant that it was a girl. I don't know what, the day I saw that positive pregnancy test, I told my husband, I was like, I would know if there was male DNA in my body right now, and there's not. Like, I am having a girl, which is so weird because I've always imagined myself having a boy first. My entire life, I've known that I was gonna have a boy first. And I just knew as soon as I got pregnant that it was a girl. So we did the sneak peek test and we did a little gender reveal, just the two of us at home. It was so special, and we found out that the baby was a boy, which was so freaking excited. We were just like over the moon about it. I go back and forth on next time if I want to do it as early as we did this time, because obviously this pregnancy didn't end up being a viable one. Part of me wonders if it would be easier if we didn't know that it was a boy, because like I kind of in my mind had like named it, and I don't know. I don't think there would have been anything easy about this, but basically that was when I was 6 weeks pregnant. And then at the very end of 6 weeks, it was a Thursday, and I had major cramps that evening. I had no bleeding, no spotting, no none of that, just really, really bad cramping, like cramps that I had to rock through. I couldn't talk through them. It almost felt like, as I was describing it, it was the way women describe like contractions during labor. So they started off not as intense and not as long, and then they started getting closer together and stronger, and it was almost like I was literally having labor contractions. Or I mean, I've never had those, but the way people describe them, at least. I called my dad, who is an OBGYN, which I'm very lucky to have that resource. And he basically said, like, that's not a super common pregnancy symptom to have cramps that are that intense. And he was like, see how you do through the night. Like, you don't think you need to go to the ER, do you? And I was like, no. And so we started worrying maybe it could be ectopic, but it wasn't like a localized area on one side. It was definitely like my whole uterus was contracting and just like radiating pain to my back through my whole kind of like abdomen area. And he was like, okay, let's, see how you do in the morning. You're probably going to need to call your doctor as soon as you get up. We woke up on Friday and I called the nurse, and she said that she was going to wait for the doctor to get in. The doctor wasn't even there yet, but she was going to basically like stand by her desk and wait for her to get in and ask her immediately what to do, because she said, just like what my dad had said, she kind of reiterated that didn't seem like a super normal pregnancy symptom. And so I got a call back about 15 minutes later, and they asked if we could come in that day. So around 10:30 or 11, we drove over. My husband was at work and I was at home, so we drove separate cars, and we got there and we immediately were taken back. We met with the doctor, and she did the internal ultrasound and was like, there's baby, there's heartbeat, there's one in the sac, and it's in your uterus. Like everything that we expected we weren't going to hear. I really thought it was either going to be ectopic or it wasn't going to be, but I don't know what. She did say that the heartbeat seemed to be a little slower than she likes to see, and she definitely was preparing us that something might not be like fully right with this pregnancy. Like she definitely was being optimistic, but not like so optimistic. So she said she wanted to see us back in 2 weeks, and in the meantime that I needed to take it super, super easy. Like don't work out, try to chill as much as I can. That was the week that I was teaching a summer intensive at Belmont. So I was teaching the full week that following week, because this was on a Friday, and I asked her if I was allowed to do that, and she was like, absolutely, just like try to be seated as much as you can, and like don't be on your feet too much, and just like try to keep the stress down, have a chill weekend, just like stay in bed and watch movies. And so that is what we did. And I cramped again, kind of on and off, but it never got back to that level of pain. And since that was the most painful, and the baby still like had a heartbeat after that, and she said like looked on track for what I was supposed to be like age-wise, it was measuring perfectly. It was just like the heart seemed to be going a little slow, but she was like, it could be that it literally is just now kind of getting started up. Like it always starts slower. So she was like, I don't want to say that's like necessarily a bad thing, but it's also not like what I would love to see at this stage. So we had an appointment to go back 2 weeks later. So it was like the end of 8 weeks. And we went in, and during those 2 weeks, you guys, my symptoms got so much progressively worse. I was more nauseous, my chest was more sore and sensitive, I had more food aversions, everything that they say happens in pregnancy, I was basically having. And that morning that we had our appointment was the most nauseous I'd been yet. I really felt like if we had lost the baby, my symptoms would not be like getting so much stronger every single day. I was prepared that something might be wrong, but this was also our first like real pregnancy appointment, because the other one was kind of like an emergency, get us in to make sure it's not like ectopic type of thing. And this was going to be our first like real pregnancy appointment where we sit down with the doctor and we get like all of our questions answered. So I had a big list on my phone of like, can I travel in week 28 and like random things like that. And so I went in and she was like, how have you been feeling since last time? Have you had a lot more cramps? And I said, I have cramped, but nothing as severe. And I said, my symptoms are definitely getting more intense. And she was like, that's an incredible sign. I love to hear that. She was like, let's go ahead and check on baby and then we can like kind of chat from there. And as she was getting the probe ready, I was telling her that we did the sneak peek and that it came back boy. And she was like, that's so exciting. Typically it's accurate for my patients, or from what I've heard. So she was like, it probably is a boy. And we were just excited, and she put the probe in, and then I was watching her face and she was like kind of, pushing around, and I could see the sac and the baby on the screen, but she was like looking from different angles. And all of a sudden she said, I'm so sorry guys. And I immediately knew. And she said, baby doesn't have a heartbeat. And I immediately was like, it's okay. It's okay. I know this would be really hard news to deliver. And I remember saying to her, this is probably the worst part of your job. Like, I'm so sorry to do this to you on this like sunny afternoon. Like, I don't know what was wrong with me. That was my like immediate response. She left the room for a little and let Grant and I like have a little bit of time together. And obviously we were sad, we were both crying, and just it wasn't pleasant. But then she came back and I was like, okay, so explain this to me, because like I don't understand why my like symptoms were getting worse, and like, did it just happen? And she said, no, it looks like it happened right after our last appointment. Like the baby really didn't grow from that last appointment, but that it seems like it's what they call a missed miscarriage. So the baby has passed, but the body still thinks you're pregnant. The body doesn't realize it had. So your HCG continues to rise, which is what kind of affects the different hormones that make you have all of those symptoms. And she was like, so your body hasn't realized yet that you have actually miscarried. And she said, there are a few different options. We can wait for your body to naturally miscarry, which could be up to like 4 or 5 weeks before it expels the pregnancy. We can induce that with some pills, or we can do what's called a D&C, which is where we basically go in and like suction everything out of your uterus and like clean it all out. I didn't like any of those options, obviously. I just wanted to have like, I don't know, a healthy baby, but that wasn't a choice for us. Lips are hard to do while you're talking. We decided to go with the pills, which unbeknownst to me, I assumed they were pills that like you take like normal pills. No, they're pills that like you insert up there, which was really weird. And so that evening we got really comfortable in bed. I laid towels down. I had like basically a pad that's like a diaper on, and did the pills, and we watched a couple movies, and I started cramping really badly, worse than any cramps I've had in my entire life. Again, I could not talk through them. I was trying to like rock through them. There were a few that I was like kind of not like screaming, but like, I mean, it was definitely uncomfortable. And I was taking Motrin, and she also gave me like a prescription painkiller that wasn't even like touching it. Around, I'd say like 5 a.m. I took it at like 7 p.m., maybe 8. And around 5 a.m. I started bleeding, and it was like kind of traumatizing. It was a lot of blood, which she had warned me, like, it's going to be blood, it's going to be tissues, and you're going to pass more than, just blood. You're going to pass the little baby. It's up to you if you want to collect it and bring it in for genetic testing. We decided against that. This is my first pregnancy, my first miscarriage. She said typically if we have patients that are having them like back to back, we'll typically test it and see what's going on. But for a first, probably not, but it's up to you. So we decided not to. And I was bleeding a lot, and that was 6 days ago. I am still bleeding a lot, not enough that like I need to go to the emergency room. So now I am just giving my body time to heal. I will say I'm really fortunate that this happened while I was on summer break from teaching, obviously, because this would be really, really difficult to be going through and also having to go to the office every day. And I commend all of the women that do that, because that's absolutely incredible. And definitely like the hardest part for me, obviously, besides like not being pregnant anymore and not having this baby that we were so excited about, is that I went through like a chunk of the hard part of the first trimester, and now like I have to do that again. And I will say there's definitely a little bit of anxiety now around like going to get an ultrasound, like when I finally do get pregnant again, which we hope is in the cards for us. It's like, am I gonna be excited for those appointments the way I was this time? Or am I gonna be like scared that I'm gonna get this news that is not exciting? Also, if I had to do it again, I would probably go for the DNC. It has been painful and kind of traumatizing to go through this with the induced miscarriage with the pills. I was going to tell you guys earlier than like what the safe time was. So they say that the first trimester, once you get out of that, you're like way more likely to have a successful pregnancy and a healthy baby. So like that's when a lot of women choose to tell people is the 12-week mark. I was going to tell you guys at 8, or like end of 8, beginning of 9, right at that appointment that I had. I was expecting everything to go great at that appointment, and I was going to come home and film that day. So like that morning I did my makeup extra nice. I like curled my hair extra nice because I really thought I was going to come home and film a video about like finding out we were pregnant and gender reveal and like all that sort of stuff. If you guys have gone through anything like this and were able to have like a healthy pregnancy afterwards and have a baby earthside, I would love if you would share that with me, whatever you're comfortable sharing, obviously. But yeah, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.